Hi, it's Barbara from Vienna, Austria. Welcome to this part 2 of our hinged journal or tab method journal, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to choose a few pages and do some embellishments. If you've missed part 1 and would like to see it, I have that link below. And as always, I will also link any products that I can down below in the description box for you. These are scans of some cabinet cards that I have purchased from the flea market. You've seen some of these before if you've seen previous videos. For those of you that don't know what cabinet cards are, they are photos taken that were mounted on cards. So I've just scanned them, printed them on 200 GSM paper, and this is the one I chose for the backside of this coin envelope, and I went over the edges with my ground espresso distress stain. And now I wanted to make quite a simple background using some scraps that I have. So this one is obviously coffee dyed, and here I'm just getting rid of the white edge where I tore a paper. This was from the Your Creative Studio box. It was like a little invoice, I think. And this is a scrap of some coffee stained paper, which I decided then not to use. So now I'm just using my tacky glue to glue these 3 bits down. I'm going to use my distress stain again to make these blobs to give it a more vintage look. And I also have this, it's a gilding wax in a copper color. I got this locally, but I will see if I can find something similar maybe on Amazon. And I really love it. This is the first time I work with wax, and I was always afraid that it wouldn't, like it would still smudge once it's dry, but actually once it's dry it doesn't move at all anymore. So it's really cool, and I love this like rose gold accent it gives to things. And I also bought these Tim Holtz Ideology embellishments. There was, I think, 111 in this pack. Most of them are really tiny, and I really enjoy using them. I think I might buy a different pack because there are different ones as well. But I must say, given that they are original Tim Holtz products, a lot of them were not cut well at all. So I must say I was quite surprised because, if I buy something like this from AliExpress, I don't have a lot of expectations. But buying original Tim Holtz products, I was really kind of disappointed. But anyway, I still love them, of course. So I just I chose these 2 butterflies. I went around it with my distress ink with a vintage photo, and I also wanted to apply some gold accent behind this butterfly that would go on the flap and also on the butterfly, although I think I put a little bit too much on that big one. But on the small one, I just dabbed a little bit on the wings, and you'll see in a moment, I really like that effect. It's very subtle, but still really nice. So I'm going to glue that over that bottom blob, and the top one just onto that flap to give it a little more interest there. Really love that shine. And then I decided to also make a tag to go along with it. So these are also Tim Holtz die cuts, and I decided to use this middle one, which I thought would work well for this little coin envelope. Of course you can cut it by hand too, but since I have the die cut, I might as well use it. And I'm also going to use my what is it called, embossing folder on it. So that's what that looked like, using a 200 GSM beige marbled cardstock. And I thought I would color it a bit by putting some vintage photo distress oxide and some wild honey distress stain on my mat, and then spritzing it with some water and then dipping my tag into it. So the first round was too yellow for me, so I added some distress stain, this espresso, what is it called, ground espresso, and I really loved that. So I was gonna go ahead and dry that, but first I wanted to use up some of those beautiful splatters, so I thought I would just put some on some of the other pages in my book. So after they were dried, that's what they looked like. And this is what the tag looked like once it dried, more or less. And beautiful stains, but all the embossing kind of disappeared through the fluid. And so my tip for you, if you're gonna use wet media on a tag and emboss it, use the wet media first and then emboss it. So here I'm just wiping up some of the other splatters that were still there and use them on my pages. So I ran this through my embossing folder again, and now you can see all the leaves nicely again, but I wanted them to stick out a little bit more, so I ran this copper gilding wax over the leaves. And that's what that looks like. I really, really love that. It's so grungy. And the backside I left as it was. So this is going to go in our little coin envelope. Looking for another page, and I wanted to use this doily that I had coffee dyed as well, and I just wanted to use a part of it, a little less than half, and to have that like a tuck spot. So I am gluing that with my tacky glue just on that one side. And then I'm going to embellish it. And I'm again going to use one of my cabinet card scans. Yeah, so I chose this lady with the hat and the script, and I'm going to cut her out. Wanted to leave some of the script in there. So I'm going to frame her with my vintage photo distress oxide again. And then I'm going to choose a couple more pieces from the Tim Holtz embellishments to frame her a little bit to give it some more interest. And there was a bingo card, so I thought that was perfect for this bingo covered journal. Again, just inking those. And then gluing them on. Making sure that underneath it doesn't stick so that you can still put something underneath, and again going over some parts with the gilding wax. I'm so in love with this, can you tell? I think I use it on every page that I do in this journal. And I also wanted to add some of my calligraphy ink in burnt sienna. I'm also really loving working with this as well. The only downside to using this is it needs time to dry. And I usually also put it in like 3 places to make it balanced. Love the combination of the ink and the gilding wax, and that is a theme I will have in most of my pages that I do in this video. On the next page I wanted to do like a kind of fold up journaling spot, so I have some coffee dyed paper here which I cut down a little bit so the width would fit on the page. And I'm going to fold one part up and the other part overlapping down, and I wanted it to have quite a rough tear on that top flap. So I'm creasing those folds, and then I'm going to glue it on this page on 3 sides so that it has still a pocket from the top, using my 3-in-1 glue for this. Alright, then I wanted to decorate that flap a little bit, again using the Tim Holtz embellishments. And I wanted to use a photo. I thought I was going to use this one, but I do change that. I mean, there's so many fun pieces in this set, I must say. It's the first time ever that I bought something like this. So I decided to go with this cute photo. And I ink it up, and I also cut a bit of that frame off that was a bit wonky. Okay, so I had 4 pieces that I chose. I inked everything up. This one I also added some tea dye distress stain on the top because I wanted to give it a little different hue than it had originally. So now I'm just going to glue all the pieces down again. And then I also wanted to add some cog wheels because I wanted to weigh it down a little bit more so that this flap stays closed a little better. So I chose 2 of the smaller ones and I glued those on with my 3-in-1 glue. Again, adding the gilding wax. Also on top of these wheels. And also again adding some of the ink. Again in various places. And for the next page, I wanted to use this, which was a stamp that I made a few years ago out of some foam, and then I cut it with my Stanley knife and I glued it onto some corrugated cardboard. So I stamped that with my Wild Honey Distress Stain, and I'm using some of these transparent prints which were in one of the Your Creative Studio subscription boxes. I must say, out of all the pages that I've done in this session, I like this one the least, because I think these transparent ones and also the washi stickers that I'm using here, I think they don't have enough dimension for me. So stuck everything down, and I decided to add this Tim Holtz washi on the bottom. I did add some glue to the back of that to make sure it stays down, and again I'm adding some gilding wax. And also some more ink. So once that was dry, that's what it looks like. And you can use your heat gun on the ink. It will bubble up a little bit, but then it will dry very quickly. So next I wanted to work on this large envelope, and I wanted to add some different size smaller envelopes to it. So I am tearing some squares. So this is the first one I'm starting out with, and after I knew where the middle was by folding it diagonally each way, I was able to fold in 2 corners, and then I fold 1 corner up. You will see that again because I'm going to show you another one. And before I glue it down, I am inking all of the edges. And then I glue down the bottom 2 diagonal sides. First I'll glue down the part that I folded over, and then I glue down the 2 diagonal sides. And this is what our very simple and quick little envelope looks like. So that's the biggest one that's going to go on there, and I'm going to make 2 more. So again, to form a square, I'm just folding a triangle up, then tearing that off. Then I'm going to fold it diagonally the other direction so I know where the middle is. Then I fold 2 opposite corners into the middle, and then I fold the bottom corner up, but I fold a little over over half of it, and then I fold a little tip down, and there's your little envelope. You can, if this is too fast for you, you can also just look for mini envelope tutorial, and you'll find so many of these. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. So once I had made 3 in 3 different sizes, that's what they looked like. And I wanted to arrange them. And I also wanted to add something in each of them. So here I'm looking through this ephemera again to see what I could add. And the biggest one is going to get this photo. And then I needed 2 more pieces for the other 2 envelopes. Yeah, so this tiny photo was going to go in the smallest one after inking it up. And there's this mini letter that I thought was perfect for the other envelope. So I also wanted to add some of that wax underneath the envelopes. And also just a little bit on each of the envelopes. And I also wanted to add a nice splash of my ground espresso distress stain. I made a smaller one on the bottom as well to balance this. And once that was dry, look how beautiful that looks together with the wax. Love that. Now I'm going to glue all these 3 envelopes down. These blobs just make them stand out a little bit more. That's why I chose this dark color behind the envelopes. So now I'm going to add the ephemera back in. I'm not going to glue it in. I want it to be able to come out. And again, adding some ink to some areas to again give it a little more depth. All right, once all of that was dry, that's what that looked like. Looking for another page to work on, and this time I'm choosing the first page, which is our repair tag. And on this one I also wanted to add one of my photos, and I really love this one. I'm again going to frame it with my ground espresso distress stain. And then I have this other foam stamp that I made also years ago. There's a whole series that I made years ago, and I'm happy I kept them. So I wanted to use that underneath the photo again to create some more contrast between the tag and the photo, and I again using my ground espresso on that. So that's what that looks like. And also to balance it, I wanted a smaller version of that on the bottom. So I just put the distress stain on the middle part, and I put that right on the corner. Next, I have this piece of like an internal envelope that I had cut, or I had punched some circles out, but I thought this negative is really nice to use. Then I also have this beautiful piece of experimental paper where I played with my alcohol inks. And I'm putting that there also to just balance the dark color on the top right. And so this is another one of these foam stamps that I made, and I've stamped this coffee stained paper using my wild honey distress stain. And so now I've glued everything down. And I also wanted to add this very narrow strip of coffee dyed cheesecloth, and of course adding some gilding wax. Beautiful shimmer. And you guessed it, also some ink. Again in 3 different places. Just little accents, but they make such a difference. So that was after it had dried. So moving on to another page. I wanted to work on this left one. I'm again using one of my photos, and this time I'm going to cut her out kind of like a Tim Holtz paper doll. And I have inked her up as well, so that's what she looks like. She really does look like one of his paper dolls, doesn't she? And I wanted to use this stamp with my black archival ink, and I'm putting that kind of to frame her head using this foam stamp again with my ground espresso stain. And that comes out really nice and grungy. Then I also wanted to use my Wild Honey Distress Stain and make a nice splash right in that center where her head is going to be, to give that little more accent. And this is a stamp that I've made using parts from hardware stores. It was a cork base, and then I glued these metal pieces on it. I think somebody once told me they're washers. And yeah, that makes a really great stamp. And so also using the Wild Honey Distress Stain, I did stamp that, and now I'm going to glue her on top of that. Love how that splash is around her head. And again, making some accents with the gilding wax. And using some ink. So using similar elements throughout your journal, of course, makes your journal very cohesive. So, and then I wanted to do something small in the back of this envelope, of the flap. So I wanted to use these 3 pieces of the ephemera of the Tim Holtz pack, and I am trying to position them. So now I'm just gluing them first together, and then I'll glue, once I've arranged them the way I want, I glue the whole thing down. And I'm gonna distress the back because you will see that when you open the envelope. And again, I'm adding little accents of the gilding wax, just a little bit of golden shine there. And that's the last page I do. So here's a flip through now of the little journal, and I'm really pleased how it turned out. It's something different. It's another way of binding a little journal. I really wouldn't go bigger than this, or you can go bigger, but I wouldn't add more pages. So this has 18 in total, and I think I really wouldn't go more because it is not as stable as a sewn in binding, for example. And since it doesn't have a spine, the pages do tear easily. But I still think it's a really fun journal to have. So that's the back, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, if you want to see more, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.